The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we're going to be talking all about the difference between powers of attorney and guardianships. What are they? How do you obtain one? And what does each document do? What do you need to know to get one in place? And when should you be considering these important and vital documents? So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons because you're not going to want to miss this important information.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare Summary Notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Receiving help for Ella has been life-changing, and the best word for it is relief. I was the therapist, I was the aide, and I couldn't be the mom because emotionally you're just to your wits' end, you're trying to survive.
I provide care for the Harrises, specifically their daughter Ella. Respite care is extremely challenging, but the rewards that you receive from it are 100 times more than working with a child that doesn't have special needs. Once they get something, it's everything. It's a you celebrate. You don't just enjoy those moments. You celebrate every moment that you get, that you guided them to that next step.
Respite. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. Will you provide it? Call 800-224-6034 or visit respite.mt.gov.
It went from survival to enjoying life and being able to be a mom again.
Brought to you by the Montana Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell, and today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, thank you for being with us today.
I love being able to present.
So today I think we should talk about something that is a little bit coming to the forefront, I think, of everyone's minds, and that is powers of attorney and guardianship. So let's just start with general definition. What is a power of attorney document?
A power of attorney document is when someone, who we refer to as the principal, gives another person, who we call the agent, certain abilities to conduct certain transactions, make certain decisions for the principal if the principal can't make them themselves.
And is there more than one type of power of attorney? Is it sort of a one-size-fits-all document?
It is not. Now we have what we refer to as statutory forms, which are forms where the actual wordage is contained in a statute. In Montana, people generally have medical powers of attorney, financial powers of attorney, and in some instances a general power of attorney, which is sort of an old school document that a lot of people had done not very recently, that sort of encompasses both financial and healthcare.
And what does a person have to have in place in order to have a power of attorney? Can it be done at any point in your life, anything like that?
You don't have to have anything in place, and I am very firm in my belief that everybody 18 and older should have a medical power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. Most importantly, a medical power of attorney, because you can never tell when you won't be able to make decisions. Perhaps you're going to be in a car accident and you're in a coma. If you're an adult, your parents don't have necessarily the right to make certain decisions for you. Your spouse doesn't necessarily have all the rights to make decisions for you. And it's important to realize that anybody at any time could be temporarily or permanently incapacitated.
One of the questions that we get all the time at the legal hotline is people calling in wanting to get a power of attorney over another person. Is that a thing that you can do?
No, because again, this is the principal, the person who's giving the rights to the other person. It's their call. And it may be that people say, well, mom's not doing so well. I need a paper to be able to control mom's behavior. Well, good luck with that, because there are no papers that will do that. But it has to be the person who's giving away or giving the rights to someone else. It is their decision. It is not the person who's trying to get the rights.
So it's one of those documents that you need to do while you still have the ability to understand and consent to the document.
Exactly. And sometimes we'll have people call in and they'll say, well, I need this document. And this person no longer has capacity. They are perhaps suffering from dementia, or they've had a other kind of brain insult, and they're not able to consent. And you have to understand these documents. You have to understand the implications of the documents, what the documents actually say, and be in agreement before you sign any of that. And that may not be where that person is.
And how does someone choose who their agent is going to be?
I think it comes down a lot to communication and trust. A lot of times we'll see people say, well, my son's the accountant, he should do the financial. My daughter's the nurse, she should do the healthcare power of attorney. Now that makes sense, but if you don't trust them to make decisions in the way that you would want the decisions made, you should not choose that person. And physical distance, especially with our ability to do things electronically now, is not the big barrier it used to be. So you don't have to pick the kid that lives down the road if you just trust the kid in Seattle to do more what you would want to have done.
And this isn't a thing there you have to name your oldest child or you have to name your spouse. You can really choose that agent based on who works well for you.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a family member. It can be a close friend. And we have an increasingly large amount of seniors who are what we call senior orphans. They don't have family.
Sure.
So they need to look outside of their relative pool, because they don't have one, to see who would work best for them. And a lot of this is based on communication. And you don't want to spring this on your agent. You don't want to say, oh, by the way, you now have power of attorney. That's not helpful.
And what if a person has very strong feelings about a particular item in their life? So either, they really don't want to receive blood products, for example, or they really want to make sure that their mother's wedding ring is never sold, or things like that, things you can put in your power of attorney?
You can put them in the power of attorney, particularly the blood product stuff. You can talk about, I don't want a feeding tube, I don't want to be resuscitated. I'm a Jehovah's Witness, for example, and I don't wish to receive any blood products. There are abilities to put special instructions in these forms so that it will meet your needs. And you can put the thing about the wedding ring. This is not something that the financial agent has the ability to sell. You can also put in instructions about if you're going to sell property or spend over a certain dollar amount, there have to be 2 signatures. Two people that have to agree that this is appropriate. So there are ways to make these forms fit your situation.
It's not really one of those one-size-fits-all documents.
No, and I think that it's very important that you sit down and you really think about this. None of us wants to think about our mortality or our possible incapacity, but it is necessary to do so, and it's necessary to let the people that are your agents know your wishes. Because again, if you're not able to make those decisions, it is easier for them if they know what you wanted.
Absolutely, absolutely. When we get back, I want to talk about the next document, which is that guardianship and how those are different. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to go over powers of attorney and guardianships when we return.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992, and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef, and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
If the Aging Network in Montana was a restaurant, the sign out front would say, over 50 million meals served over the last 30 years. Since adequate nutrition is critical to health and quality of life, nutrition services are an important factor in keeping older Montanans healthy, independent, and living in their community and home. To find out more about senior nutrition programs in your area, call 1-800-551-3191.
Is that Robert Knievel? Captain Lewis, Captain Clark, I'm officially Evel Knievel now. I'm getting my Montana Real ID.
Did you make an appointment at mtrealid.gov?
Yes, sir.
Smile.
I brought my non-laminated Social Security card, 2 documents proving my current residential address, and my certified birth certificate.
Approved.
Go to mtrealid.gov.
Now I can fly. It's that easy.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, we've already talked a little bit about what a power of attorney is and what it does, but let's talk about the document that's sort of next in line. What is a guardianship?
A guardianship is a formal court proceeding where you declare somebody incapacitated. It is what we refer to as legal death, or it can be referred to as turning the ward into a child in the eyes of the court. It is a pretty drastic step, and it is a step that we hope is not necessary, because if you have good powers of attorney, you rarely need a guardianship. But say you decided you weren't going to sign any of those papers. Well, something happens, you become incapacitated, your spouse, your kids, they can't do what they need to do because they don't have the authority. So then they have to petition the court and say this person is incapacitated, can't manage their affairs, can't make health care decisions. Those petitions are usually supported by affidavits, usually from medical personnel and other folks, to talk about what they've observed with your inability to function. During that process, you are entitled to your own attorney, and if you can't afford one, a public defender will be appointed to you, a special visitor, and an independent medical exam, perhaps from a doctor who's not your treating physician. This takes some time. Sometimes families will get emergency orders because it's an emergency and they can't wait for all the formalities to take place. Sure. But once a guardianship is issued, as the ward, the person who is incapacitated, you lose a lot of your rights. You don't get to decide where you live. You don't necessarily get to decide who you associate with. You're not in control of your money. That means you can't buy groceries. You can't pick out clothing. Your life is very confined. So think about someone under guardianship being essentially like a child or a teenager. You live where you live, but you don't control any of the aspects of your world.
Sure. And in Montana, there is a separate document, a conservatorship, that can be granted at the same time. Can you explain what that is?
A guardianship's over the person, a conservatorship is over the money. If there isn't a conservatorship established, a full guardian has the ability to handle both the money and the aspects of the person's life. But a conservatorship is just over money, and you don't have to be declared incapacitated. In other words, you could have trouble managing your money, but have other aspects of your life completely under control. And you could petition the court to say, I need a conservator because I know I'm not going to handle my money correctly.
Sure.
I'm coming into a big court lawsuit settlement, or I won the lottery, or I just can't make my checkbook balance anymore.
I can't stay off of Amazon.
Exactly, or QVC. And so consequently, that is a lesser standard. You don't have to have the same standard. Generally, if you have somebody who is incapacitated, the same person can be the guardian and the conservator.
And I know in Montana we don't have any sort of formal assisted decision-making statutes, but that is something that could be built into a guardianship, correct?
Exactly. A guardianship can, again, be tailored. It can be for certain purposes. It can be reviewed. Under our laws right now, there is no mandatory review process or time period. I suggest it's always good to look at this person a couple of years down the road. Maybe they had some kind of a mental health crisis.
Sure.
And once that crisis is passed and they're on appropriate medication and they're getting therapy, they no longer need a guardian. And so there are various ways that these documents can be used.
And this is not something that I would petition generally the court for myself. This is something that normally a family or friend or maybe even Adult Protective Services petitions the court for.
Right. And in fact, if you petition the court, then it would fall into question whether you were incapacitated. If you could pull it together enough to actually file the paperwork, that would probably indicate that you are in fact not incapacitated. So a conservatorship can be filed by the individual. I have never seen a situation where a guardianship was filed by somebody to say, here, take my rights away and let somebody else manage my life for me.
And what are some of the reasons that people go for guardianship or conservatorship?
Well, again, if people haven't done their powers of attorney and there is a crisis, somebody ends up being in a nursing home, their house needs to be sold to pay for their care, there are things that need to be made, certain medical decisions that need to be made, and this person's no longer able to do so. It is, again, for most people, sort of a last resort. We do know of situations where you have profoundly disabled children. When they turn 18, a lot of times the parents will apply for guardianship for them because of the fact that these individuals cannot manage their life. We're moving toward assisted decision making and other types of tools for that particular population, but we see it happen pretty frequently if you've got a profoundly disabled child.
I think one of the things that we'll talk about next is just sort of how estate planning in general can really help alleviate the need for guardianships in so many ways. So make sure you stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss that conversation about how your estate planning can really inform what happens to you as you near the end of your life.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, you may well feel devastated, but know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting. But it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
When I stopped showing up, Jim showed up at my door. He took me to the hospital in town to get me help. That's the day Jim saved my life.
Everyone has a role to play in preventing suicide. Know the signs and don't be afraid to speak up. If someone you know is in crisis or emotional distress, the only wrong thing to say is nothing at all. Call 800-273-TALK or text MT to 741-741.
Every generation produces heroes, men and women who step forward to defend our country in time of need, no matter the personal cost to themselves. And though we can never fully repay them, we can make sure they have access to low-cost, long-term care when they need it. That's what Montana's Veterans Homes are all about. If you've got a hero in need in your family, call us. We can help.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contract attorney for the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Susan, we just talked about guardianships, and I realize that that's probably a situation that most people never ever want to find themselves in.
Right.
We talked about the powers of attorney and how that's one part of estate planning. Why is that such an important thing to do ahead of time?
Well, again, you can be more clear-headed if you're not sick or you haven't suffered some kind of an injury.
Sure.
And you can make certain decisions when you are fully in charge of yourself. And I think that's really important. I think that's also really hard because, as I said before, people don't want to confront their own mortality. They don't want to confront the fact that they might be incapacitated. The other thing is I think a lot of people are scared to do powers of attorney because they think they're giving away all their rights. And the thing about a power of attorney, and I'm going to do a hand gesture because this is how I know how to explain it the best. When you have the principal and you have the agent, as long as the principal can make the decisions, the agent's job is to back them up, not get in front of them and interfere. If the principal can't make decisions, then the agent can come in and make those decisions. And power of attorney is also revocable.
Sure.
Should you choose the wrong person and it becomes apparent you've chosen the wrong person, you can revoke that document in writing and you can appoint somebody else. So I think it's just very important because people will assume what you want. People will think they know what you want. And again, that's where the conversations, painful though they may be, need to come into this. And the powers of attorney that we do are what are referred to as durable, meaning that you sign them, they're in place. Should you become incapacitated, they're still good. They don't expire just because you become incapacitated. There is language, it's called springing language, where you can draft a document and say, I don't want this document to come into use until certain things take place. That can be dicey. You may not be able to have somebody meet those criteria, and then that your agent can't act, you can't act, nobody's in charge, and that's when you find yourself perhaps dealing with a guardianship.
I think a lot of times we see that when somebody's capacity is sort of vacillates. You know, one day they're having a really great day, and then Wednesday they're having a really bad day. So when does that power of attorney become valid? It can be very difficult to understand.
It can be difficult to understand. The other thing is people think, oh my Lord, once somebody starts to fail, once they have a dementia diagnosis, which doesn't always happen, by the way, we can't have them do papers. There are, for many people, a large period of time where they are lucid. They do understand. They may fade in, they may fade out. That's a time period where I think you need to get a professional in to evaluate somebody's capacity to show whether or not they are capable of filling out the documents. My number one rule is don't wait. Get those documents in place. You can always amend them, you can always change them, you can always change agents. But please don't wait, because unlike turkeys, we don't have a timer that pops out and says, okay, now you're incapacitated, or now you need help. And I have seen and experienced some horrific situations with family and friends when the documents were not done.
And we've talked about guardianships, we've talked about powers of attorney, but there's sort of like this third class of documents that I kind of think of as like helping documents, and those are more like the advance directives, the 5 wishes, the POLST. Can we talk a little bit about those?
Yes. Again, a power of attorney for healthcare can be very vague, it can be very specific. There are documents referred to as living will and a living will appointment. And a living will is designed to use when you're in your last illness. Now, quite frequently, we don't know what our last illness is, but sometimes we do. A living will is where you direct your medical providers to do what you want them to do in your last illness. You know, don't keep me alive, don't prolong my life to prolong my life, don't get a feeding tube, don't put me on a respirator, that sort of stuff. Then there's also a living will appointment, which directs an individual that you name, and it could be the person under the healthcare power of appointment or not, to work with your medical team to do what it is that you would like in your last illness.
Sure.
And a POLST is an order actually to the doctor. 5 wishes is a similar sort of, I want this, I don't want this, I want this, don't want that. Again, it's always easier for everyone, medical providers, family, friends, if people know what you want.
Sure. And some of those documents are a great space to provide details that are maybe not necessarily even medical. You know, what type of music do you want? Do you want a window open?
Right.
Do you prefer to have the television on in the background? Things like that are about your comfort, about your quality of life.
Right, and we've seen specific instructions that says if I am hooked up to machines, I want to be prayed over by my faith community for a certain period of time before the machines are disconnected. I mean, you can really craft some really lovely things. Most people that we work with just don't want their life prolonged unnecessarily.
When someone decides, okay, I need to make these documents, I need to make these changes, where do they go?
Well, they can always seek out legal counsel, which we think is very appropriate, because with estate planning, generally you are talking about a will as well. And so private attorneys abound, and most attorneys do some kind of estate planning. There are people that are specializing in larger estates. Our program does do these kind of documents for seniors 60 and over. If these estates are complicated, if their situations are more complex than we can deal with, we will tell them that and send folks to seek private counsel. But again, our program does very specific, simple planning documents for folks. We do them over the phone. We do live clinics every summer. We're going to be in a variety of places this year: Lewistown, Glendive, Miles City, Immigrant, Hamilton, Deer Lodge. Did I miss any?
No, I think you got them all.
And this next month we're going to do stuff virtually in Polson. So it's really important to know that these resources are out there, that they don't have to be expensive. I'm not going to say you shouldn't hire an attorney, because it is really important to get the best advice you can from someone. So we're not one size fits all, just like these forms aren't one size fits all. But there are resources out there for individuals who need to do this, and I wouldn't let cost be the defining factor of whether or not you get your documents done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan, for being with us today. And as a takeaway from today, start planning early, because you never know when you might need these important documents. So thank you for staying tuned to Aging Horizons today.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.